Let me tell you something right now. You ain't ready for what you're about to hear. You think you've seen power. You think you've witnessed dominance. No, you haven't. Because the most terrifying power in today's world doesn't come wrapped in arrogance. It comes wrapped in silence, in humility, in discipline, and that's exactly what India's military is all about. People walk around every day making noise about who's got what, which country has more missiles, who controls the seas, the skies, the cyberspace. But real strength ain't loud, it's focused, it's calm, it doesn't advertise, it demonstrates, and India's military, ladies and gentlemen, is the clearest example of that kind of power the modern world has ever seen. You see, there was a time when people underestimated India. They saw it as a land of spiritual gurus, yoga, festivals, Bollywood, and call centers. They saw a country that was serving the world, but not leading it. But what they failed to recognize was that this ancient civilization wasn't asleep. It was preparing. They were building something quietly, methodically, patiently. They were designing a military force that didn't need validation, it needed purpose. And now that force has arrived. Now let me say this to you. When a nation with 4 billion people starts to believe in itself, when that nation stops asking for permission and starts executing plans, the world changes. The air changes, the global chessboard rearranges, because India's military isn't just a machine of steel and fire, it's a living organism of vision, sacrifice, and national pride. And baby, when that kind of belief gets backed by billion-dollar budgets cutting, edge defense tech, satellite command, and nuclear capabilities, you better wake up and pay attention. You want to know what real power looks like? It looks like a country that has the 4th largest air force in the world, and they ain't just flying, they're soaring. It looks like a navy that controls key choke points in the Indian Ocean, one of the busiest trade routes on Earth. It looks like a military that can go from Ladakh to the Andaman Islands in hours, covering deserts, mountains, jungles, and coasts with tactical precision most countries dream of. And don't even get me started on the Indian Army. These ain't weekend warriors, these are mountain-bred, battle-hardened soldiers who have seen it all, fighting at altitudes most humans can't even breathe in. You ever seen a man march with 40 kg on his back, up a snow-covered Himalayan pass, defending borders with a calm look in his eyes like it's just another Tuesday? That's not training. That's DNA. See, the terrifying power of India's military doesn't lie in numbers. It lies in mindset. It's a force that doesn't fight because it wants war. It fights because it understands peace. It defends because it knows the cost of surrender. It protects because it remembers its history, a history where it had to bow, bend, and break. But not anymore, not today. India isn't just protecting its borders. It's protecting an idea of sovereignty, of growth, of unity in diversity, of democracy in the world's most chaotic region. And that idea is now armored in tanks, guarded by submarines, and powered by satellites. That idea wakes up every morning at 5 a.m. in army camps, salutes the tricolor, and trains till the sun sets. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of Agni? That's Sanskrit for fire, but in India, Agni is the name of their long-range ballistic missiles, capable of reaching deep into enemy territory with pinpoint accuracy. Now that's not aggression, that's deterrence. That's India telling the world, we're not here to start trouble, but if trouble knocks on our door, we'll end it before it finishes breakfast. The terrifying power of India's military is not that they can destroy, it's that they won't unless provoked. That kind of restraint, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Only the strongest can afford to stay calm in a world that thrives on chaos. You look around the world right now, flicks everywhere, proxy wars, trade wars, cyber wars, And amid all this madness, here comes India, rising like a giant, but walking like a monk. That balance between might and maturity, that's what's terrifying, because you don't know what's coming. You just know it's capable of everything. India is not trying to be a global policeman. It's not trying to flex unnecessarily. But don't misunderstand that humility for incapability. India's military is equipped, educated, and engaged in modern warfare like never before. From artificial intelligence to hypersonic missiles, from space-based defense to drone swarms, this ain't your grandfather's army. This is a force born in tradition, but raised by technology. And let me tell you something about how that power is distributed. It's not in the hands of reckless minds. It's in the hands of scientists, scholars, engineers, and generals who understand the value of life and the price of liberty. When the Defense Research and Development Organization DRDO speaks, the world listens. Because when they innovate, they don't just make weapons. They make statements. Remember these. India doesn't manufacture war. It manufactures preparation. It manufactures readiness. It manufactures grit. And the terrifying part is, they've gotten so good at it, they don't even need to brag. They just let results speak. Now let me take you to the battlefield you never see, the digital one, cyber warfare. India is building an elite force in cyberspace capable of defending national interests in real time. You won't hear about these men and women. You won't see their uniforms, but their keyboards click like sniper rifles. Their firewalls block more than viruses. They protect sovereignty. And what about the skies? The Indian Air Force isn't just a support arm, it's a predator in its own right. Tejas fighters, Rafale jets, AWACS systems, and BrahMos air launched missiles form a deadly combination that ensures India's enemies stay grounded. You mess with India, you deal with the skies first. Now let me bring this home with a truth you probably weren't ready to hear. India's greatest weapon is not its nuclear capability, or its tanks, or its fighter jets. India's greatest weapon is unity under pressure. Because when that tricolor is under threat, 4 billion people become soldiers in spirit. It doesn't matter what language they speak or what state they're from. When it's time to defend the nation, that unity becomes iron. I've seen countries fall apart from the inside because of divisions. But India, it absorbs the noise, it absorbs the criticism, and then it walks into history, carrying wounds on its back and courage in its heart. That's terrifying, because how do you defeat a nation that refuses to be broken? Now don't get me wrong, India's military ain't perfect. No institution ever is, but what separates them is this: they evolve. Fast, efficiently, relentlessly. Whether it's the surgical strikes across the border or the lightning deployment during national disasters, India's forces know how to respond, not just react. And in today's world, that difference means everything. Let's talk about the youth, the young cadets walking into academies across India, their eyes burning with purpose, their minds sharpened by adversity. These are not just future soldiers, they are future leaders. Because India trains them to think before they shoot, to strategize before they march, to lead with honor before they lead with power. You know what's really terrifying about India's military? The enemy never sees it coming until it's too late. It's not just about warfare, it's about psychological dominance. When the enemy knows that you're capable of ending everything but choose not to, that's when fear becomes respect, and that respect, it's global now. Joint military exercises with the U.S., France, Japan, Israel, Australia. You think all these countries are partnering with India out of charity? No, they see the writing on the wall. They see a power rising, not just politically or economically, but militarily. And it scares them, not because India wants war, but because India is too ready for it. You ever heard the phrase silent storm? That's India's military, a quiet juggernaut, a moving mountain, a sleeping lion with one eye open. It doesn't need the world to approve of its strength. It just needs the world to know not to test it. Let me leave you with this thought. The terrifying power of India's military isn't about destruction. It's about preservation. It's about protecting culture, protecting progress, protecting dreams. And that kind of power, my friend, is more lasting than any bomb, any bullet, or any battle. Because in the end, wars are not won by weapons. They're won by will, and India's will is terrifyingly unbreakable. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine backed by innovation. The fusion of ancient war philosophy with cutting-edge tech is India's deadliest weapon. This fusion did not happen overnight, and it was not by accident. It was a calculated journey built over centuries of resilience, spiritual clarity, strategic patience, and relentless adaptation. In the DNA of India's armed forces, there exists a deep respect for the ancient, an understanding that the past is not a limitation but a foundation. And layered on that foundation is an aggressive pursuit of modernity, a willingness to break conventions, and the boldness to experiment with technology that many fear to wield. India's military today reflects a paradox, a force rooted in the wisdom of Chanakya and the strategies of the Mahabharata, now operating drone swarms, autonomous surveillance grids, and AI-enhanced battlefield intelligence. This isn't a coincidence. This is the manifestation of a doctrine that says you do not abandon who you are to become powerful. You elevate who you are and amplify it with every tool available. And that belief has reshaped everything from how Indian commanders think to how military cadets are trained. The Bhagavad Gita is not just a scripture. It's a manual of duty, a text on war ethics, decision, making under fire, and balance under pressure. That very text has informed military leadership philosophies, embedding a sense of righteous warfare into strategic planning. While the West developed doctrines based on pure projection of force, India studied how to project deterrence, how to win without fighting, how to choose battles, and when to walk away to win another day. That principle, inherited from epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, is now paired with technologies like hypersonic missiles, AI decision systems, and satellite-guided precision strikes. It's not just about who has the most tanks or missiles anymore. It's about who can think 3 moves ahead and act 1 step faster, and India's fusion of ancient wisdom with modern science gives it that unfair advantage. Take, for example, the rise of cyber warfare. The concept of Maya in Indian philosophy, illusion, deception, perception, now finds direct relevance in digital deception, psychological operations, and information warfare. India's cyber units have adopted this concept not just as theory, but as an operational mindset. Creating illusions digitally to disorient, misdirect, and mentally disrupt enemy systems is not new. It's just being done with code instead of arrows. And that conceptual leap from metaphysics to defense strategy is the kind of intellectual alchemy only India could pull off. But this fusion goes even deeper. In ancient India, warriors weren't just trained physically. They were mentally, emotionally, and spiritually calibrated. The concept of Dharma Yuddha, righteous war, demanded internal balance and ethical clarity. Today, this spirit is infused in modern military protocols, especially within India's elite forces. Soldiers are taught not just to shoot but to think, to restrain, to decide when *, not * to act. That level of conscious control, powered by thousands of years of philosophical grounding, creates warriors who are more than machines. They are intelligent guardians of sovereignty. When India began its Atmanirbhar self-reliance journey in defense, Many saw it as an economic initiative, but at its core it was philosophical. The Upanishadic idea of self-realization, of looking inward for strength, became the blueprint for defense manufacturing. Indigenous technologies like the Tejas fighter jet, the Arjun tank, and the BrahMos missile weren't just products. They were statements of intent. They represented the emergence of a nation no longer dependent on foreign blueprints, but capable of producing war machines with the soul of the subcontinent embedded in their circuitry. Even artificial intelligence, which dominates modern warfare, is being reshaped through this lens. Indian defense scientists are designing AI systems that don't just optimize attack. They weigh ethical implications, strategic timing, and collateral outcomes. This is ancient moral calculus, redesigned in code. Where others race blindly to automate killing, India's AI asks, should we strike? Is it necessary? Are we aligned with our principles that conscience-driven AI is not a weakness? It's the terrifying strength of a country that still believes war is a last resort, not a currency. Space is another arena where this fusion is evident. The ancient Indian text, the Surya Siddhanta, was one of the world's earliest astronomical treatises. Today, India deploys satellites that not only map terrain, but provide real-time intel to soldiers on the ground. When India tested the Asat missile in Mission Shakti, it wasn't just showing it could knock out a satellite. It was announcing that it understood the implications of orbital dominance and that it was prepared to engage in 21st century celestial warfare with the same clarity that ancient sages once mapped constellations. The culture of command within India's armed forces also carries the mark of this fusion. Leadership is not about domination, it's about responsibility. Commanders are expected to serve their men, protect their morale, and uphold a code of honor that predates colonial ranks. This leadership style, informed by the traditions of Guru-Shishya-Teacher, student relationships, and the king-warrior ethos of ancient times, results in units that fight not just out of obligation, but out of shared purpose. In training academies like the Indian Military Academy and the National Defense Academy, cadets are taught that warfare is not just muscle, it's mind. They study military history from around the world, but they also dissect ancient Indian texts to understand strategic patience, deception, and terrain adaptation. Concepts like Shatru Vinash, the complete dismantling of enemy capability, are studied alongside modern joint operation tactics, creating a layered understanding of total dominance. The defense budget is no longer spent only on importing hardware. A significant portion is now flowing into R/&D facilities that echo the spirit of ancient Indian gurukuls, places of discovery, not just delivery. These labs are designing quantum communication systems, unmanned underwater vehicles, high-altitude surveillance drones, and even next-gen infantry gear with exoskeletons, all while being guided by the foundational belief that technology must serve humanity, not enslave it. Psychological warfare is another domain India has mastered, thanks to its understanding of human behavior through ancient texts and spiritual systems. India knows how to control the narrative, how to inspire its own citizens while unnerving its adversaries. The concept of karma isn't just religious, it's weaponized. Enemies who attack India learn that actions have consequences, and this belief becomes a psychological edge when troops go to battle with an unshakable sense of purpose, believing they are agents of balance, not chaos. Even the terrain warfare that India dominates, mountain, desert, jungle, is influenced by a connection to the land that dates back thousands of years. Indian forces don't just operate in harsh conditions, they thrive. That's not only due to physical preparation, but spiritual integration. They believe the land is sacred, the mission is sacred, and so is the sacrifice. This mindset cannot be replicated by nations that view war only as a resource game. This is war as a duty, as a karmic calling. When India responds to provocation, it does so with precision. Surgical strikes, cross-border operations, intelligence raids. These are conducted not in a frenzy, but in accordance with strategic texts that teach timing, deception, and surprise. Kautilya's Arthashastra, a 4th century treatise on statecraft and war, is still quoted in India's defense think tanks, because while others build brute strength, India is building brain-powered resilience. It doesn't seek glory in victory, it seeks balance after conflict. This synthesis of ancient and modern gives India a posture that is unpredictable, and unpredictability is terrifying. One minute India is mediating peace. The next minute it's deploying battalions with satellite cover and encrypted comms. One minute it's quoting Mahatma Gandhi. The next minute it's launching an anti-satellite missile. That contrast is deliberate. It keeps adversaries guessing and allies watching. Even in public communication, this duality is clear. Military parades showcase tanks and jets, but also regiments dressed in historical attire. The message is subtle: we are new, but we are old. We are changing, but we are constant. We may be digital, but we are still spiritual. And that fusion creates a kind of national confidence that can't be faked, bought, or imported. The Indian soldier is not just a man with a rifle. He is a symbol of legacy and progress. She is a guardian of borders and values. They carry rifles, but also man satellites. They train with weapons, but meditate with intent. They recite mantras for clarity before missions, and input coordinates into heat-seeking systems. It is this blend of soul and steel, intuition and infrared, history and hardware that makes India's military doctrine uniquely formidable. In the global arena, while other militaries boast of sheer numbers or raw spending power, India's strength lies in philosophical advantage. Where others rely on firepower, India brings foresight. Where others deploy fleets, India deploys focus. That's why India's enemies are not just afraid of its weapons, they're afraid of its mind, and that mind has been forged over centuries of struggle, defense, diplomacy, and inner discipline. When it integrates itself with modern-day warfare systems, cyber weapons, AI targeting, satellite intel, stealth technologies, the result is something the world hasn't fully seen before: a military power that isn't built on destruction, but on design, on wisdom, on a timeless playbook with modern pages.